it was a super weird day. Like, we have chickens, and so my dad was out back with my mom and my sisters, and I was inside, and he came in and was like, I think I got stung by something. And we didn't really think anything of it because he's been stung before. Like, it's never really been a big deal. But he immediately he was like pale, like so stark white, and just immediately like totally like a ghost.
And then bam, I was on the other side, and I was floating there. And the first thing that came to my mind was I was home. I was just immersed in a blanket of just love and acceptance and everything positive, nothing negative. God, like, is this God before me? Like, because this is something that is just so huge. Like, the love coming from it, it's absolutely perfect.
Good evening and welcome to Earth to the Other Side. I'm your host, John Glasspool, and tonight I have a very special guest. His name is Kevin Lutz. He had an NDE back in 2021 in July 13th, where he was stung by a bee. And I will let him tell you the story. Thank you so much for being here, Kevin. It's wonderful to have you on the show.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy to tell my story and just to see what you think of what happened to me. But yeah, it was last year. I'm 60 now, but I was 59 at the time. And I had just gotten home. I live out in the country, and I just run some errands. I live about 30 minutes out of town. And my family had been sitting out in the backyard. And so I went back to see them. And while we're sitting there talking around the table, I got stung on my arm right here. And, right away I realized, I just saw the thing fly away, and I assumed it was a bee or whatever. And I didn't really think much about it, but I went back inside, and then about 10 minutes later, something was going on. My heart rate had just gone through the roof. I was sweating, flushed. I asked my wife to bring me some Benadryl, and then I took some, but then I just said, you need to call an ambulance because something serious is going on. And shortly after that, it just happened so fast. I was sitting there on the edge of my bed, and my wife was right beside me, and I literally could just feel the life just draining out of me. Like, I think my blood pressure, my heart was racing so fast. My blood pressure must have just fallen. And I remember looking at my wife and saying, this is really bad. I think I'm going to leave you. And then I was able to tell her, like, I felt so scared, but then I got scared for her. So then I was just able to tell her how much I loved her and everything, which made me feel so great. But then all of a sudden, it was like this tunnel right in front of me, about 7 feet away, appeared, and my daughter was standing there, and it was about a foot off the ground. It went all the way to the ceiling. It was about 4 feet wide. It had like a gray border going around it, and the border was it was coming out and curling in on itself, like it was churning. Mm-hmm. And I looked up this tunnel, and there's parts where I could kind of see through and like see the wall of the hallway or whatever, but it looked like I could just see way up there. And at the end, there was like this bright little thing of light. And I looked at this thing, and I was going to point at it and say to my wife, like, do you see this? But before I could even do that, this thing kind of popped out of me. It was like an oblong, diamond-shaped thing, and it was right in front of my face, and it was rotating, and it was kind of reddish in color, but I could kind of see through it. It looked rigid, but it was solid. And I looked at it, and then all of a sudden it shot towards the tunnel, and that's when I saw that there was like maybe 15, 20 of them, because they all hovered there at the same time, and they came out of me. I can't explain it. And then they went into the tunnel. They got sucked in all at once. And as soon as that happened, I was like hooked up to this tunnel. Like I could feel this tunnel with every molecule of my body. And I could feel, I couldn't see, but I could feel there was something in that tunnel, and it was going through all those shards, I guess I'll call them. And it had like all my data of my life. And it was going through it. It had everything that I've thought, I've eaten, everything was there. And right at the end of it, it seemed to be going over all my personal feelings. It seemed to be really interested in all the hardships, all the pain that I've carried in my life. It really seemed to be interested in that. What this was, I have no idea. But I know when it was looking through everything, I could tell that it didn't care what race I was, if I was a man or a woman, what I did for a living, how much money I had. All it cared about, it cared that I was a human, and that was all that was important. And it was going through everything in my life. And then it decided to come out. All of a sudden, it started coming out of this tunnel. And it felt like an avalanche of just energy, of love, of everything positive, of an acceptance, just washing all over me. Anyway, I couldn't even imagine, I couldn't even imagine what was going on. My wife was right beside me. My daughter was right in front of me. Something came out of this tunnel. I couldn't see it, but as it came out, I could see it washing over my daughter's left arm and her body, because she was standing right beside it, and it was like rippling. It was like a clear energy. And I don't think I talked to her about it afterwards. She said she didn't feel anything, but I saw it flowing over her. That's the only time I saw it. Anyway, it was in the room. And that's when things kind of darkened for me. My daughter in front of me and my wife beside me, they just disappeared. I was on my own. I was still sitting on the edge of the bed, looking at the tunnel, and about 5 feet over, that's when I noticed that there was something in the room with me. And I kind of looked over to take a look at it. And it was something that was just radiating intelligence. It was just absolutely, I was like gobsmacked. It was just radiating so much power, so much strength, intelligence. I looked at it and I could see something spinning. And for a second, the spinning stopped and I could actually see what it was. And it was like a little silver gray metallic disc. And then it had rings around it, and they all were spinning. And then they started spinning like so fast. And then it seemed to like erect this really weird kind of wall around it. So I couldn't see it anymore, but I could still sense it was there. I could tell it was there because I could feel it with every molecule of my body. I could feel it with my DNA was hooked up to this thing. It was so unreal. And I couldn't see it anymore, thank God, because I think I would have gone insane if I could actually see this thing. But it started coming towards me, and I can't, now when I think of it, it probably didn't have a limit on its IQ, and it was old. I could just tell that the age coming off of it was hundreds of billions of years. Like, this thing is old. And right at that time, I kind of realized that, I think I'm looking at God. Like, is this God before me? Because this is something that is just so huge. like the love coming from it. It's absolutely perfect. I can't, I have a hard time explaining it, but it was just like what we're taught about God and everything. We don't even have a clue, because what this was like what they teach about God and that in the church is like a firecracker going off. What's before me right now is like an atomic, the biggest atomic bomb being exploded. Like there's no comparison. It's just, I could feel my mind starting to slip, because what I was comprehending was just too much for me. And all of a sudden I get like this message, and it says, do not worship. And that's all it says. And for some reason, this is like a slap to my face. It's like a bucket of cold water being thrown on me. It like sobers me up. And I'm like, and then I seem to get like all this information that's just saying, it cares little for worship. It wants me to live my life, just stuff like that. It was just unreal. And then I get like a vision. All of a sudden, I get like a vision of the earth on my left-hand side. And it's like the earth is right there. And then right before me is like the universe. It's like our entire universe, like right there. And then there's something else on my right side, but I can't remember what it is. My mind won't let me remember, or it's blocked it out. I don't know, but I'm understanding. It's telling me that it's in charge of all of this. It's connected to every single thing on this earth, in this universe, and that this is how it learns, man. It learns through us. It learns through everything, because it's a part of everything. And I think when I first saw that spinning molecule or something, for some reason, I get the message that this is like, that this molecule is like in everything. It's what connects the whole universe. It's so weird. So anyway, I can kind of see an outline. I'm getting a projection of these three things. The third thing I can't tell. And I get a little impression of the outline of what I think is before me, which I guess is God, but I don't know what this is before me. It's so big. And I kind of look into it, and I can see, it's like I kind of fall into it. It's like falling into like a giant cloud. And there's like these bursts of blue, like electricity, like coming up towards me. And I tell you, man, you could I could have just floated in that forever. But then all of a sudden, that is gone away. And there is something else like right there before me, and it's staring at me. And it's like so humbling, because it's like the universe looking at me. And I'm like with everything that's going on, this universe so big, like this thing has time for insignificant me, like, anyway, this thing, and this thing's not God. I don't know what this is, but it starts coming towards me. And as it does, it looks like just multiple like eyes, I guess. And they're kind of spinning. But as they are concentrating on me, they're kind of opening me up, it seems. It's releasing my soul. This is what's going on. And all of a sudden, it just comes down to like one big eye looking at me. And there is my soul, like coming out of my body. And it looks like a little piece of gold, like rough, and it's just floating there. And a little tendril of gold goes up towards this eye. And then the next thing I know, I'm in the tunnel. I'm not my body anymore. I know I'm not my body, but it feels like me, and it feels like I have my body. But I know it's just my soul and my consciousness, and we're in this tunnel. And it doesn't feel, I know I'm moving so fast, and it seems like I'm moving like away from Earth, like, and I'm going an incredible distance really fast. But as myself, it doesn't really feel like I have the sensation of movement. And then, it seems like my perception expands, and I can kind of tell where I'm at. And I'm inside, and it's almost like a water balloon. And on the outside of it, I can feel information, but it's not something I can touch, or it's like, it feels like it's static, but it's not. It's moving, and it's moving super fast over the layer of this water balloon I'm in. And then I kind of snap back into where I'm at, and everything comes into perception, and I tell that I'm like way far away from this thing, and I'm floating there. And I could be a mile from it. I could be 10,000 miles. I don't know. And I'm looking at this thing, and it's like, it's flattened, and it's kind of curved. And the light that's coming out is like, the light is being flattened. And that's the other thing I should tell you. Like, I'm in this dark cave, and there's no light on me. All I can see is this light down there, but it's all trapped at the bottom of this thing. And I think this was a black hole that was transporting me from this realm to the other. That's the only thing I can think of everything that, anyway. But all of a sudden, I was just immersed in this white light. It felt like every emotion, it just felt like I was being stretched, like in a million different, and it felt so uncomfortable, and I was being stretched, pulled, and I got up to the point where I was going to cry out, like, why? Like, let me in, like, I don't know. And then bam, I was on the other side, and I was floating there. And the first thing that came to my mind was I was home. And I don't know why, that's the first thing, you're home. And I'm floating there, and it's like I'm in space. And to my right, there's like this column of gold. It's shaped like this, and it's huge, far away. Like I'm floating in the universe. There's all these white lights. And I zero in, and I zero in the one closest to me, and I can see it's like there's like a pattern to it. I realize it's a soul. I realize I'm a soul. I know what I look like. Like, I'm not human formed or whatever. I'm like soul shaped now, I guess. But this other soul that's closest to me, I look at it, and I can tell it's not the same as me. Like, it's something different. And I think, is this like an alien? And that just didn't seem right. And this is where, we're super far out. But anyway, I recognize it as a machine soul. This is like a robot, a self-aware robot that has died, but has carried on to the other side, and I thought to myself, how could that be possible? And then a female voice speaks to me and says, well, think of it this way. She starts talking to me. I realize this is my guide. I have a guide. I have somebody that's telling me, that's going to tell me stuff. And I realize I'm totally surrounded by, like, in this universe, I'm totally surrounded by information. Like, I know that there is whatever I want to know, whatever's happened in this universe, I know it's in here. I don't know how I know this, I just know it. Anyway, this female voice starts talking to me and just says, well, think of it this way. You think, when you're, it doesn't matter if you're, what did she say? It doesn't matter if you're biological or machine, you're going to get to some point in your existence where you're going to become self-aware, and you're going to look into the universe, and you're going to wonder, who am I? What am I? And it's going to be no different than a machine. And that machine is going to, when it becomes aware, it's going to have the same kind of thoughts, or not the same kind of thoughts, but it's going to have the same kind of wonders when it looks out into the universe. Like, what is this all about? Like, what does this mean, kind of deal? But then she told me that we were special because, unlike that machine robot or that machine soul, that soul could never travel back to our universe. Like we can reincarnate. When I was over on the other side, like I have a wife and I have like 5 beautiful children. But I tell you, man, I would have stayed there forever if I was given the choice. But I wasn't given the choice. I was given the choice, but I was sent back. And then the next thing I know, I'm back. But I'm like I'm just instantly, I'm back and I'm floating above my body. And I'm about 3 feet above my left shoulder, and I'm looking down at myself. And I can see myself sitting there on the edge of the bed, and I'm still looking directly towards the tunnel. That's a little over that way. But I can see myself, and I'm starting to close my eyes. I'm starting to tip over to my right side, and I know right then and there that this is the point where I die. Like I know that in the next minute or so, or next second or so, I'm going to fall off that bed and I'm going to hit the floor and I'm going to be dead because I've already left my body. I'm floating above it. I can't do anything about this. And this whole thing that's happened to me has happened like in a split second. Like it's that fine second between life and death, like that fine line. And when I was in that line, it seemed like time, like I was outside of time. So a lot happened in a split second. So anyway, I'm floating over my shoulder. I'm looking at myself. The next thing I know, I'm just slammed back into my body. Like it feels like I've been a piece of clay and I was just thrown against the wall. Like it's just like, bam, I'm back in. And the first thing I noticed is every neuron in my brain, it seems like it's firing. And it seems like my head is like 5 times the size. It's just, and I'm just like, oh my God. I don't know why, but I think, man, if we just knew the potential of our brains, you know, it's just unreal. Like it was just the most unreal sensation I've ever felt in my life. I'm still being just buffeted with that feeling of love and acceptance and just, and the tunnel's still there. And I'm like, what the hell? Like I'm thinking, like, why is it still here? That's what I'm thinking. It basically tells me why. It sends one word into my brain and this word just totally, like any sanity I had, it just like, and anyway, it shot this word into my brain and I was just like, this kind of brought my mind kind of back. And I remembered the word, and the word was, it was choose. And I understood it was asking me to choose whether I wanted to go back or wanted to stay. And I just said, I want to stay with my family. And I opened my eyes. It was gone. The tunnel was gone. That feeling was gone. It was unreal. And, but man, I was just so confused after it. I think my blood sugar had bottomed out too. I don't have diabetes or anything, but I think the bee sting had caused like a cascade of effects. And because afterwards, man, like for 2-3 hours, I was so confused and just, I couldn't open my eyes because this world looked so weird. Like people Like when the EMS guys showed up, I couldn't look at them. They looked so weird. But I fell asleep when I got down to the ER, and then I felt better when I woke up. But it was just the weirdest thing. And like for 2 weeks afterwards, I couldn't drive a car. I would think about that light and the feelings that I felt from this being, and that feeling of patience that it made me feel so humble. And I'd be driving, and I would just be drifting off thinking, and I'd lose concentration. So I had to stop driving for a couple of weeks. One of the best things that happened after this was, like, for 6 weeks for that, I tell you, man, I slept like a baby every night. Like, I would go to bed at like 9 o'clock at night. I would wake up at 5 in the morning, I'd sleep like I was like a 5-year-old that had played at the beach all day kind of deal. It was so it was so great.
What an incredible experience. And thank you for sharing that with us. I wanted to know, actually, so you did end up in the hospital, right? In the end?
Yeah, I got dumped into the waiting room. I didn't actually see anybody. The hospital was they had a internal COVID outbreak.
Okay.
So they were on like locked doors things, and it was just I guess a crazy day. So I actually wasn't seen by. I came in and they just put me in a wheelchair and took me out to the waiting room, and that's where I fell asleep for like 2 hours out there. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So.
Yeah. It's amazing because the way you describe your experience, it sounds it's quite unique. It's not like anything I've ever heard before, but at the same time, I could parallel it to, what's referred to as a life review. It seems like all those information downloads that you were given, they kind of unfolded sequentially, right? Or were they all out of order, or did it even matter? You just were sort of given everything at once?
No, everything, like I was hooked up. It seemed like I was hooked up to something, and I had no control of what information was given to me, but I kind of had a general knowledge of things. The information would come so fast, and that's why, like, afterwards, like 5 days into this, after this thing, it was like on Sunday. And that was the thing, my mind, man, it took like a good week for me to get my mind clear.
Right.
Because I guess just from the shock or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But 5 days afterwards, I just had to start writing stuff down, because I couldn't keep, things kept just like, man.
Incredible. And you felt a lot. You had mentioned that you felt a lot of emotions. And did you feel anything like from other perspectives, like emotions in particular situations, but not from your perspective, but somebody else's? Do you know what I mean?
No, I felt emotion from whatever what this cosmic being or whatever, like when it was having the patience with me and stuff like that. But no, all the emotions, yeah, it was all from it. I was just immersed in a blanket of just love and acceptance and everything positive, nothing negative, and like, I just don't, and that's my biggest thing that I've thought about ever since is, like, I think, like for me, I'm not like, I'm not a saint, I'm not a criminal or anything, but have I made mistakes in my past? For sure. Have I stolen stuff? Yeah. But I'm not a criminal. I've worked my whole life and stuff like that. But when I was younger, I did stuff. And, but I know that I've always been a good father to my kids, and I've been like a good person, like, and the thing I'm trying to say is this death experience, it seemed like it was customized just for me. And I think every other person has their own way to get to the same place, you know what I mean? But because they're different, like for you, like you're a different personality. We don't know each other. We don't know how each other thinks. And when it comes to your time, you're not going to see the same thing as me. Probably not, but there's probably a few things that seem to be common, like the tunnel and the light and it seems like the blanket of love in that, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
The tunnel is also very interesting because I mean, I've never heard of somebody having this type of experience in parallel with like the joining of the two worlds, you know, at once.
No.
Yes, like being on the other side and looking down at what's happening for sure, but you sort of had like, you know, perspective from here on Earth, seeing the tunnel and
like I can't believe, like the thing was, like as soon as it's happened, and like I said, this happened like in a split second, man. Like my family didn't even have a clue what was going on, you know, because this happened so fast in their eyes. But for me, this went on for a bit. As soon as it happened, I knew that something out of the ordinary had happened to me. And I just couldn't believe how much I could remember of what happened. Like if I sit down and I think about things, I can really dive deep, and I can feel, if I really sit there and I think about things, I can actually feel how I felt when I was, when the universe, I guess, was like right there, like just that feeling of just joy and like, and it helps with the memories. It's kind of like, you know, you hear a song and you can, you know, a song that you heard 40 years ago and you can kind of remember it was kind of like that with my emotions. And that was the thing that voice told me, that lady. She said that, you know, like us, like as humans, you know, we're very intelligent. You know, we have this exceptional body that is actually very amazing, but it is limited in how long it can live. But it's the emotions that we produce, which is it's for some reason, this is very important for when we die, we pass on like all the information that you and I have accumulated on this earth. It cannot be destroyed. It's just like, it's like energy. Energy can't be destroyed, neither can information. That's why our lives are important. That's why every life is important, because every life has a different perspective on this earth. And all this information that we live on this life, it's, you know, it doesn't get lost. The universe it absorbs it. Like everything that we do is not going to be lost. Like it's important.
Yeah.
But really just as my background, you know, not very religious. And, you know, just like everyone else, I've always wondered, I always hoped that there was like a God or something, but I would look at how big the universe was and I'd be like, how could that be possible? But now for some reason, I just know that it is possible. And I have no,
Kevin, you never know.
Yeah, no, I've been to church and stuff like that, but I'm not a big, there's a lot of problems I have with religion. And some things I just don't agree with. So my wife was raised Catholic, but myself, I wasn't. We were always raised to believe that there was a God and that kind of stuff. But my dad he was like a good old country boy. So, you know, it was kind of like a country religion is what I was relayed, or how I was taught when I was a kid.
So how's your perspective of life and death changed, if at all, since this incident? Like before the incident, did you believe there was an afterlife?
You know, I kind of was on the fence. I really kind of wish there was. I kind of hope there was, but then there was the whole hell thing, like, oh my God, would I end up in hell kind of deal? Like, I just didn't like thinking about that. But then I would look at, like I said before, I'd look at the universe and I'd be like, it's so big. How could something be able to take care of this whole universe. But now I see that, yes, in fact, it is true that there is something that is connected to everything in the entire universe. You know, I'm still kind of scared of dying. I don't want to go through that. It's a pretty big trauma your body goes through. But I do understand that when I went through, it seemed there was like 3 points in the whole thing. It's in that death process where I was really in a lot of distress mentally in that. And it seemed like every time that happened, something would come in to calm me down, you know? And so it seems to me that this blanket of love and everything that we get is to help us transcend our soul into the next life, to help keep the trauma down, because, you know, dying is pretty traumatic for your mind and body. So, but as for the dying part, like, man, if that's actually where I'm going to go, that's a pretty good deal. And I really, I don't know what your beliefs are or anything like that, but I didn't see any whiff of any negativity or any hell or anything like that. I don't know if it exists.
I think it's a state of consciousness. And, you know, I mean, what do I know? But I think it's basically a state of consciousness. And anyone that has experienced hell that might be watching this, I apologize. I'm not trying to minimize anything. Definitely know you believe and what you experienced was real. But the thing is, you know, I believe that that's just like that. Like I said, it's a state of consciousness, and then hopefully eventually, and most people, it seems, you know, that I've at least spoken to or heard from on other channels have eventually broke out of that and found love and whatnot. Speaking of which, now you're talking about this feeling of love, and you had various like levels of this experience, but at one point you said you sort of like came back to your body and all those things disappeared one by one, and even that whole feeling. So did you not carry that over with you, that feeling of that love or understanding, like, you know, post NDE? Yeah.
No, I totally understand that feeling. I carry that in my chest, man.
Yeah,
that feeling of what I felt. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The way I look at the world now is like everything that I've told you, this whole story. When I woke up that morning of July 13th, 2021, like none of this was in my brain. And then when I went to bed that night, you know, my mind, like I was changed, like where this came from, I have no idea. Well, I do, and I do have an idea. I die. But yeah, like as soon as that tunnel and everything appeared, but then those shards or whatever, when they appeared, yeah, you know, it was like floating, like right, like it shocked me because I kind of felt it. It kind of came out of my head, and then they all flew over, but they stopped, and that's when I saw there was like, and I know they all came from my body, and for some reason, when they got sucked into that tunnel, I think that's what it used to download my life.
So yeah, I was just speaking with your dad about his whole near-death experience, and I wanted to sort of get a little bit of your perspective right from the actual day it happened, if there's anything that you wanted to share with us about it.
It was a super weird day. Like, we have chickens, and so my dad was out back with my mom and my sisters, and I was inside, and he came in and was like, I think I got stung by something. And we didn't really think anything of it because he's been stung before. Like, it's never really been a big deal. But he immediately he was like pale, like so stark white, and just immediately like totally like a ghost. And at the time their bedroom was down here. And so my mom was basically like, just call 911. I had to leave the meeting and say, I have to call an ambulance for my dad. And he was just sitting on the bed, and he was just like I'm sorry, like, I'm so proud of you guys, like, I'm so proud of you, I'm gonna miss you guys so much. And like, he kept looking past me, like towards where my bedroom is, and he wasn't really looking at me, but he was saying like, I'm so proud of you guys, like, I love you so much. He was just like really freaking me out because like, he wasn't acting normal. And then he just basically like, our pug came up and he started petting him and was just like, oh, I love you so much, like, I'm so glad you're here. Like, but he was just almost crying, like he was just so upset. And then I went out front to wait for the ambulance, and then when I came back in and like they were loading him on, he was still just like, I love you guys, like, I'm so proud of you, like, I'm so glad that you guys are in my life, like, and was super freaking us out. And then he just kind of like came home and he was like, it was the weirdest thing. And then over the next couple of days, he just started opening up to us about what had actually happened, and that he had this near-death experience, and that he saw something standing right behind me, like this light, and slowly started telling us more. And then he let me read his what he'd written about it. And yeah, it was a really like scary experience because I'd never obviously seen him like that, and he was very much affected by what happened. Like, it obviously really unsettled him. And yeah.
Wow. I mean, wow, thank you for sharing that. It's amazing. And what are your thoughts on all of this?
I mean,
what do you think he experienced?
I'm not sure. Like, I consider myself a skeptic for most things. Like, I like to look at the more scientific side of things. Like, I'd like there to be ghosts and an afterlife and stuff like that. Like, I like that idea of it, but I don't know that I necessarily believe. But like, what he's experienced and what he describes is such such a profound experience that it's hard for me not to look at that and say he experienced something. Like, he obviously, like, something happened, and I don't know, like, just the way he talks about it and the way he writes about it, it's obviously something so personal and deep and touching that I can't just be like dismissive of it and be like, oh, that there's no such thing, because obviously it happened. For sure. And obviously it happens to a ton of other people. Yeah. And so it's kind of broadened my thinking on like looking into it, and maybe there is some scientific explanation, but there also could just be a spiritual one. And I don't, unless I go through that, like, there's not really any way for me to say.
It could even be both.
Exactly. Yeah.
Either way, it was extraordinary by the sounds of it. And
absolutely.
I mean, just so grateful that he was able to share that with my channel, because I mean, I've never heard anything like this. It's really extraordinary and unique. Yeah,
that's what the feedback's been so far, is people saying like it's just so detailed and vivid, and that's really been impressed upon me, like how well he remembers it and how much it affected him.
Well, thank you so much, Pila. I really appreciate you doing this. It was last minute, off the cuff, and you're awesome. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, John.
My pleasure.
I was so grateful for my family. Like, that's another, I'm so happy for and grateful for my wife and my kids, and my wife. She saved my life that day, and will forever be. Because when I came back, I couldn't like I said, I couldn't open my eyes. But all I could do was listen to her voice, and she kept me calm, because I started getting very anxious when I started thinking about things, and she kept me very calm until the ambulance and that came, and yeah, she definitely helped me.
Yeah, it's interesting how because you said that there's that split second between life and death, and that's when your experience might have happened. But at the same time, and like, your experience happened here and there. Like, it's like you had one foot
I know
out. So, technically, it lasted at least a few minutes with all the.
Who knows? Maybe my memory of how the time was, transpiring is probably a little off too. After this all happened, and when I was recovering from this, the few weeks after the incident, I think a lot about, my life, my past, and that. But it was weird because when I'd look back at my past at times where, you know, maybe I wasn't so proud, that kind of stuff, I was able to see like the good that I had actually been doing for myself, you know, because when I was still, you know, my mom died at a young age. And when I was still going to high school, I was basically living on my own. I was working full time and I was going to high school and that kind of stuff. Hey, and, but I was kind of like a loner because I was by myself all the time. But I look back at those times now and times before where I'd feel ashamed. I'd look back now and I'd feel like, damn, man, you were doing pretty good for yourself, you know, for your situation and that, and you were taking care of yourself and you were doing the right thing, but you couldn't see it.
Yeah.
You know, it was so weird. It seems like when I came back to my body, all my memories and that were downloaded, but they're not quite the same because I think all my original memories are out there in the cosmos now. They all got downloaded. When I came back and all my neurons were like firing, I think they were giving me back all my memories and everything too. But I don't know, they're just not quite the same. I can look back in my life and I actually see, you know, the good things. My memories were more clear. I could remember things better. Okay. I could actually remember like the smells, like when I was a kid playing at my aunt's place. She lived on the beach in Qualicum Beach, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like it was great. It was like, I kind of had a life review afterwards, you know? It's definitely changed my outlook on how I look at what's important in life now.
Is there anything you wanted to add, or is there any message you wanted to give to maybe the viewers?
I just, the thing that I think was a couple of things that were like, I thought were really important was that about the information that information cannot be destroyed, which in turn means that, you know, all like that, which means like our life experiences that we live on this earth, whether they're good or bad, they're all important. But now I kind of know that it doesn't matter if, you know, I live the life like a movie star or if I just live the life like the regular working man that I am, but my life is just as important as anybody else's out there, you know? So.
Most definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really all.
Thank you so very much for being so open and for sharing your experience. And but this whole thing has been really, really, really amazing, and I appreciate your time and I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, John.
Likewise.